I'm Layla Thompson, 57 years old, and I've been a professional seamstress for over 30 years. When my daughter Natalie got engaged, I poured my heart into creating her wedding dress stitch by painstaking stitch. 5 months of labor, love, and dreams went into that gown. Then on her wedding day, I heard the words that shattered my heart. If she asks, tell her it doesn't fit. It looks like something from a thrift store. I'd love to know where you're watching from today. If you've ever had your love thrown back in your face, please hit that like button and subscribe. The way I handled what happened next taught me what real strength looks like. The first time I held a needle, I was 7 years old. My grandmother sat beside me on her worn floral sofa, guiding my small fingers as we repaired a torn doll dress. Gentle but firm, she'd say, her voice soft with concentration. The needle knows where it needs to go. You're just helping it along. Those early lessons turned into a lifelong passion, then a career, then a legacy I hope to pass down. My little tailor shop in Millfield wasn't fancy. Just a converted storefront with good lighting, 3 sewing machines, and walls lined with fabrics of every texture and color. For 32 years, I'd created everything from simple alterations to elaborate formal wear. My specialty became wedding and special occasion dresses. There's something magical about crafting a garment someone will wear on the most important day of their life. Natalie was born when I was 26, just 3 years after I opened my shop. Her father, Mark, and I were so young ourselves, still figuring out how to balance marriage, parenthood, and our struggling businesses. Mark's hardware store took up most of his time while I juggled caring for an infant and keeping my fledgling tailor shop afloat. Despite the challenges, those early years were beautiful in their simplicity. From the beginning, Natalie was surrounded by fabric thread and the gentle hum of my sewing machine. As a baby, she napped in a bassinet beside my work table, while I carefully stitched bridesmaid dresses and suit alterations. When she could toddle, I created a special corner in the shop with fabric scraps she could play with. By 5, she had her own child-sized sewing basket with plastic needles and colourful yarn. "Mommy, make me pretty," she'd say, standing patiently as I pinned fabric around her for yet another special outfit. Her first day of kindergarten, I made her a blue pinafore with embroidered daisies. For her 8th birthday, a princess costume with layers of tulle that made her squeal with delight. Each Christmas concert, dance recital, and school play came with a custom-made Layla Thompson original, crafted with love in late-night sessions after the shop closed. Her high school prom was my first true masterpiece for her. We spent weeks selecting the perfect shade of emerald green that complemented her auburn hair and fair skin. I remember her standing in front of the mirror in my shop, tears in her eyes, as she saw the finished dress for the first time. "Mum, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever worn," she whispered, turning to catch the way the silk shimmered under the lights. "None of the other girls will have anything this special." For her high school graduation, I created a sophisticated white dress with subtle beading that made her look grown up, yet still reflected her youthful spirit. The photos from that day still sit on my mantel, Natalie beaming between Mark and me, her cap slightly askew her dress, catching the June sunlight. Those were the days when she still valued what my hands could create, before designer labels and brand names became her measure of worth. Before she moved away to attend the university that stretched our finances to the breaking point, but that we insisted she deserved. College changed Natalie in ways I hadn't anticipated. Each time she came home for holidays, she seemed a little more distant, a little more critical of our small town, our modest home, my practical clothes. Her new friends were from wealthy families, girls who carried handbags that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. I noticed how she would casually drop their names and the exclusive places they frequented. Jessica's parents have a summer home in the Hamptons, she'd mention over Thanksgiving dinner. Or Alicia's dad got us tickets to that impossible to get into club in the city. Meanwhile, I put off replacing my aging sewing machines, and Mark delayed retirement, both of us funneling every spare dollar into Natalie's tuition. We wanted her to have opportunities we never did, to move through the world, unburdened by the financial constraints that had shaped our lives. Perhaps we succeeded too well. After graduation, Natalie took a marketing position at a financial services firm in the city. Our weekly phone calls became monthly, then sporadic. When she did call, she talked about promotions, office politics, and shopping trips. I listened eagerly hungry for any details of her life, even as I noticed she rarely asked about mine. Then came the Sunday evening call that changed everything. "Mum, I have news." Her voice bubbled with excitement in a way I hadn't heard in years. "I'm engaged," Ryan proposed last night at Le Ciel. Le Ciel, I later Googled it, was an exclusive restaurant where dinner for two easily exceeded a week's income from my shop. Ryan Peterson worked in investment banking, came from a good family, as Natalie emphasized, and had presented her with a diamond that required its own insurance policy. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I said, genuinely happy to hear such joy in her voice. "We can't wait to meet him." "And, Mum," she continued, her voice softening, "I was thinking, would you want to make my wedding dress? I know it's a lot to ask with your regular work and everything." My heart soared. After years of feeling increasingly irrelevant in her life, here was an invitation back in a recognition of what I could offer that no amount of money could buy. "Natalie, I would be honored," I said, tears forming. "It would be the most important thing I've ever made." What I didn't say was that it would also be my greatest gift to her. Not just a dress, but a tangible expression of a mother's enduring love, stitched with memories of all the garments that had come before, from tiny pinafores to prom gowns. A full circle moment I had dreamed about since the first time I felt her kick inside me. "Great," she said brightly. "I have tons of ideas. I'll email you some designer dresses I've been looking at for inspiration." That night, I sat in my sewing room at home, surrounded by fabrics patterns and 30 years of creating beautiful things with my hands. I sketched preliminary ideas for my daughter's wedding dress, imagining how she would look walking down the aisle in something I had created. I allowed myself to believe this dress would bridge the growing gap between us, reconnecting us through the shared language of fabric and stitches that had once been our special bond. I had no idea that instead of bringing us together, this dress would ultimately reveal just how far apart we had grown. The emails started arriving the next day. Dozens of images of designer wedding dresses with eye-watering price tags. Vera Wang, Oscar de la Renta, Carolina Herrera. Dresses that cost as much as a car, some as much as a down payment on a house. Natalie's notes were detailed and specific. "Love the detailed beadwork on this bodice. Perfect neckline, but would want sleeves like this other one. Adore this train length, but with a different lace pattern." I wasn't intimidated. After 3 decades of creating custom clothing, I knew I could craft a dress that rivaled these designer creations. What concerned me was the underlying message in Natalie's references. These weren't just design inspirations, but benchmarks of status and exclusivity. Nevertheless, I threw myself into the project with everything I had. I spent evenings drafting multiple design options, combining elements Natalie liked into something unique, yet reflective of current bridal trends. After 2 weeks of work, I had 3 comprehensive sketches to share. Our first planning meeting took place at an upscale cafe in the city, halfway between my shop and Natalie's apartment. I arrived early, nervously arranging my sketches and fabric swatches on the table. When Natalie swept in 20 minutes late, she was talking on her phone and gesturing apologetically to me. "Madison, I'll call you back about the venue." Yes, the deposit is fine. Talk soon." She slid into the chair across from me, looking polished in a way that made me suddenly conscious of my practical shoes and simple blouse. Sorry, Mom. Wedding planners are so high maintenance. I smiled, pushing away the small hurt that she had hired a planner without mentioning it to me. It's fine, sweetheart. I'm excited to show you these designs. As I walked her through each sketch, Natalie's responses were positive but reserved. This is really good, Mom. I'm impressed. She paused at the third design, a sleek silhouette with vintage-inspired lace overlay. I think this one could work with some modifications. Those modifications turned out to be substantial. By the end of our 2-hour meeting, the original design had transformed considerably, inching ever closer to one of the designer dresses she'd emailed, a Monique Lhuillier gown with a $60,000 price tag. Do you think you can find fabric like this? She asked, showing me a close-up of French Alençon lace on her phone. It's really important that the lace looks high-end. I'll need to order it specially, I said, making notes. It won't be cheap. Natalie waved her hand dismissively. Don't worry about the cost. I want it to be perfect. What Natalie didn't understand was that not cheap in my world meant potentially spending my entire savings. But looking at her excited face, I couldn't bring myself to mention budget constraints. This was my daughter's wedding dress. How could I put a price limit on that? The search for materials became an odyssey. I visited specialty fabric shops in 3 different cities, ordered samples from international suppliers, and spent hours researching the most exquisite laces and trimmings. Eventually, I found what I needed. Italian silk satin for the underdress, French Alençon lace for the overlay, seed pearls, and crystal beads for embellishments. The total cost depleted my savings account and maxed out a credit card I'd kept for emergencies. The actual construction began in February, with the wedding scheduled for July. I continued running my shop during regular hours, then worked on Natalie's dress each evening until midnight or later. Weekends disappeared into a blur of precise stitches, delicate beadwork, and meticulous lace appliqué. My body protested the punishing schedule. I developed an ache between my shoulder blades that no amount of stretching would relieve. My eyes strained from focusing on intricate details for hours in artificial light. My fingers, normally nimble despite decades of use, became stiff, and sometimes so sore I had to soak them in warm water before I could continue. But the physical discomfort paled compared to the emotional investment. Each stitch contained a memory, a hope, a prayer for my daughter's happiness. As I shaped the bodice, I remembered holding infant Natalie against my chest. As I hemmed the cathedral-length train, I imagined her father walking her down the aisle. As I attached hundreds of tiny seed pearls by hand, I envisioned future grandchildren, perhaps someday wearing a christening gown made from pieces of this very dress. The first fitting came 6 weeks into the process. Natalie arrived with her maid of honor, Jessica, one of the college friends I'd heard so much about but rarely met. Jessica's assessment of my work in progress was delivered with the confidence of someone accustomed to expensive things. The silhouette is surprisingly on trend, she said, circling my daughter, though the lace application is different from what we saw at that bridal salon in Manhattan. Mum's adding the lace pieces individually, Natalie explained. It's more time-consuming, but apparently creates a better effect. Apparently, I had spent 80 hours on the lace alone by that point. You know what I mean, Natalie said quickly. It's looking really good. The bodice feels a bit loose, though. I made dozens of notes, pinned adjustments, and promised refinements. As they prepared to leave, I overheard Jessica in the hallway. It's actually not bad for a homemade dress, though you could still change your mind about the Monique. Homemade. The word stung. This wasn't a child's craft project, but the work of a professional with over 3 decades of experience. The second fitting revealed a subtle shift in Natalie's attitude. She brought 3 bridesmaids this time, all eyeing my modest shop with barely concealed judgment. As Natalie stood on the pedestal in front of the mirror, her friends circled like elegant sharks. "The beadwork is coming along nicely," said one, touching the bodice. "Though it's not quite as dimensional as the Vera Wang we saw." "I think the train could be fuller," offered another. "More dramatic for your entrance." Natalie absorbed their comments with nods, then turned to me. "Can we add more structure to the bodice? And maybe reconsider the neckline? I'm seeing more sweetheart necklines in the magazines now." Major changes 8 weeks into construction. I kept my face neutral despite the sinking feeling in my stomach. "I can make those adjustments," I said calmly, "though it would mean reconstructing significant portions of the bodice." 2 weeks later, I met the wedding planner Madison when she accompanied Natalie to a fitting. Madison was younger than Natalie, but carried herself with the authority of someone used to managing million-dollar events. She inspected the dress with clinical detachment. "The silhouette is coming together," she said, making notes on her tablet. "What's your timeline for completion?" "We'll need to schedule the final professional steaming and pressing." "I'll handle all finishing myself," I said. "That's included in my process." Madison and Natalie exchanged glances. "We'll have the same service that handles all the linens and bridal party attire, give it a once-over," Madison decided, "just to ensure everything is consistent." The implication was clear. My work needed professional intervention to be acceptable. I swallowed my hurt and focused on pinning the hem to the exact length Natalie wanted. As the weeks progressed, I overheard phone conversations where Natalie seemed to distance herself from my creation. "Yes, we're still going with my mum's dress," she told someone. "It's important to her. Not, 'I love what she's creating,' or 'my mum is making something beautiful,' but a concession, an obligation being fulfilled." The final insult came during a dinner with Ryan and his parents at their country club. I wore my best dress, also self-made, but not recognizably so. Ryan's mother, Eleanor, sleek in designer casual wear that probably cost more than my monthly income, brought up the wedding plans. "I still don't understand why you're not wearing a proper designer dress," she said to Natalie, swirling her wine. "We'd be happy to make that a gift to you. Something worthy of the venue and photographer." Before I could respond, Natalie jumped in. "Mum's putting so much work into it, and it's actually turning out really pretty." Actually, as if this were surprising. As if 30 years of professional experience might still result in something substandard. Ryan's father changed the subject, but the damage was done. On the drive home, Mark reached across the console to squeeze my hand. "The dress is beautiful, Layla. Natalie's lucky to have a mother with your talent." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. I was beginning to understand that no matter how perfect the dress, it would never be what Natalie truly wanted. Because what she wanted wasn't about quality or beauty, but about the status of a designer label. Nevertheless, I pushed forward. In the final month, I added thousands of hand-sewn seed pearls, perfected the drape of the train, and adjusted every seam for a flawless fit. I worked through exhaustion, through doubt, through increasing awareness that my daughter's appreciation for my craft had diminished in direct proportion to her rise in socio-economic status. The dress was completed 1 week before the wedding. Looking at it on the dress form in my shop, luminous, intricate, perfectly constructed, I felt a complicated mix of pride in my achievement and sadness that its true value might never be recognized. It was without question the finest garment I had ever created. The bodice featured precisely placed lace appliques that created an illusion of floating on the skin. The skirt moved like water, thousands of dollars of Italian silk, trained to flow exactly right with each step. The cathedral-length veil, featured the same lace motifs as the dress hand-applied in a gradually diminishing pattern that seemed to melt into transparency at the edges. This was not just a wedding dress. It was the culmination of a lifetime of honing my craft and a physical manifestation of my love for the daughter who had grown increasingly distant. In every stitch, I had tried to bridge that distance to speak in the language we had once shared, before designer labels became more important than the hands that created beauty. The night before the wedding, I carefully packed the dress in a specialized garment box, along with the veil, a lace garter I had also made, and emergency supplies for any last-minute fixes. Tomorrow would be the true test, not just of the dress, but of whether my daughter could truly see the love stitched into every inch of it. The Windsor Hotel stood 14 stories high in the heart of the financial district, its limestone facade and doormen in formal livery, announcing its exclusive status without a word. I arrived at 9 in the morning on Saturday, carefully maneuvering the large garment box through the ornate lobby. The wedding wasn't until 4 that afternoon, but Natalie and her bridesmaids were already in the presidential suite for a day of hairstyling, makeup, and champagne. "You must be the mother of the bride," said a young woman with a headset and clipboard who intercepted me by the elevators. "I'm Kira Madison's assistant. Let me take you up." The elevator whisked us to the top floor in near silence, my stomach fluttering with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. After 5 months of work today was the day Natalie would finally wear the dress for its intended purpose. "The glam squad is almost finished with the first round of bridesmaids," Kira informed me as we walked down a plush hallway. "We're running slightly behind schedule because the mimosa delivery was late, but we should catch up by noon." I nodded, concentrating on carrying the dress box carefully. We stopped outside double doors with a discreet presidential suite plaque beside them. "Let me check if they're decent," Kira said, tapping lightly before slipping inside. Left alone in the hallway, I took a deep breath, readjusting my grip on the large box. Through the door, I could hear music playing and women's voices, laughing, talking over each other. Then, unmistakably, my daughter's voice rose above the others, clear and cutting. "If she asks, tell her it doesn't fit. It looks like something from a thrift store." My hands froze on the box. Surely I had misheard. "What are you going to do?" asked another voice. Jessica, I thought. "I already have the backup dress," Natalie replied, followed by more laughter. "The Monique. It's hanging in the closet. I bought it last month when I realized how the photos would look with me in a homemade dress." "But your mum spent so much time on it," said a voice I didn't recognize. "I know and I feel bad, but this is my wedding. These pictures are forever. I can't be wearing something that looks DIY next to Ryan in his Tom Ford tux." The conversation shifted to someone's spray tan disaster, but I remained frozen outside the door, the words replaying in my mind like a slap. Thrift store. Homemade. DIY. 5 months of work, thousands of dollars in materials, a lifetime of skill, all dismissed with casual cruelty. A physical pain bloomed in my chest, radiating outward until my fingertips tingled. My vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. In that moment, standing in a plush hotel hallway, holding the vessel of my shattered heart, I had a choice to make: confront or retreat. The door opened and Kira beckoned me inside. "We're ready for you now." I straightened my spine and blinked back tears. With composure I didn't know I possessed, I stepped into the suite. The scene was exactly what you'd expect from bridal preparations in a luxury hotel. Champagne flutes on every surface, makeup artists bustling between beautiful young women in matching silk robes, flowers and gift bags, and scattered jewelry. Natalie sat at a vanity, her hair half done, looking startled as I entered. "Mum, you're early," she said, a flush spreading across her cheeks. "The dress is heavy. I wanted to make sure it had time to hang properly before you needed to get dressed." My voice came out steady, betraying none of the turmoil inside. 6 pairs of eyes followed me as I moved toward the bedroom area, where a rack of bridesmaid dresses stood waiting. I carefully placed the box on the king-sized bed and began to unpack it, my movements deliberate and controlled. "Mum, maybe we should do that later," Natalie said quickly. "We're in the middle of the hair and makeup." I didn't respond, simply continuing to remove the dress from its protective coverings. As the full creation emerged, luminous silk, intricate lace, thousands of hand-sewn pearls catching the light, a hushed silence fell over the room. Whatever they had expected, this wasn't it. "Mrs. Thompson," whispered one of the bridesmaids. "That's incredible." I finished arranging the dress, smoothing the train carefully across the bed. Then I turned to my daughter, whose expression flickered between shock and something like shame. "I believe you already have other plans for this," I said quietly, making sure only she could hear me. "So I'll take it with me." "Mum," she began, but I held up a hand. "It's your wedding day. You should wear what makes you happy." I carefully repacked the dress, my movements still precise despite the trembling I felt inside. "I'll see you at the ceremony." I left the suite with my head high, the garment box once again in my arms. No one tried to stop me. In the elevator alone with my reflection in the mirrored walls, I finally allowed a single tear to fall. Not for the rejected dress, but for the daughter who couldn't see the love sewn into every stitch. The hotel's garden terrace was empty this early in the day, the chairs and tables for evening cocktails not yet arranged. I found a bench partially hidden by an ornamental cherry tree and sat down the garment box beside me. For several minutes, I simply breathed, trying to process what had just happened. My mind replayed moments from Natalie's childhood, her small hands learning to thread a needle, her delight at each special outfit. I created her pride in telling friends that her mother had made her prom dress. When had that pride transformed into embarrassment? When had my skilled hands become something to hide, rather than celebrate? The garden was quiet except for distant traffic sounds and the occasional call of a bird. I opened the garment box again, running my fingers over the bodice I had constructed with such care. Each pearl represented hours of work, each lace applique placed precisely to flatter my daughter's figure. This dress wasn't just fabric and thread. It was a testament to 30 years of honing my craft and a lifetime of loving my child. Memories flooded back unbidden. Natalie at 6, insisting on wearing the Halloween costume I'd made to school every day for a week. Natalie at 12, bringing friends to my shop after school, proudly showing them the evening gown I was creating for a local doctor's wife. Natalie at 17, walking into prom with her head high in her emerald green silk dress, fielding compliments with, "My mum made it. She's amazing." What had changed? When had designer labels become more important than the hands that created beautiful things? When had homemade become an insult rather than a point of pride? My phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. It was Carol, my younger sister. "How's the mother of the bride?" she asked cheerfully. "All ready for the big day?" The simple question broke something inside me. "Oh, Carol," I whispered, my voice catching. "What's wrong? What happened?" Her tone immediately shifted to concern. I told her everything. The overheard conversation, the backup dress, my quiet exit with the rejected gown. "That ungrateful little—" Carol began, her protective instincts flaring. "Don't," I interrupted. "It's her wedding day. I don't want it ruined with conflict." "Layla, she ruined it. Not you. What are you going to do? Are you staying for the ceremony?" It was the question I'd been asking myself since leaving the suite. Did I have an obligation as mother of the bride to sit in the front row and pretend everything was fine? Could I watch my daughter marry in a dress, chosen specifically to replace mine without my heart breaking all over again? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to go home right now, but another part wants to be there for her anyway, Carol finished, because you're a better person than she deserves right now. We talked for nearly an hour, weighing options, processing hurt. Carol, always my fiercest defender, advocated for confrontation or departure. But as I sat in that peaceful garden with the dress I had poured my soul into, I realized what I needed most was to maintain my dignity. I'm going to stay, I decided finally. Not for her right now, but for the relationship I hope we can rebuild someday. And for myself, to know I didn't let hurt feelings make me miss my only daughter's wedding. You're stronger than I am, Carol said. Do you want me to come? I can be there in 3 hours. No, I need to handle this myself. I took a deep breath. I'm going to find some place to store this dress, then get ready for the ceremony. I'll call you tomorrow. After hanging up, I sat quietly for a few more minutes, gathering my strength. As I stood to leave, a young hotel employee approached tentatively. Excuse me, ma'am. Are you Mrs. Thompson, the mother of the bride? I nodded. Your family is looking for you. The wedding coordinator asked all available staff to keep an eye out. Thank you. I needed some quiet time, but I'm heading back in now. He glanced at the large garment box. Would you like help with that? We can store it securely until after the ceremony. His kindness, small as it was, nearly undid my composure. Yes, thank you. That would be very helpful. I followed him to a storage room where he carefully placed the box on a high shelf, tagging it with my name and contact information. With that physical burden temporarily lifted, I straightened my shoulders and headed to the hotel room where Mark was waiting. I had a mother of the bride dress to change into and a facade of happiness to construct. The next few hours passed in a blur of practiced smiles and mechanical actions. I helped arrange family members for pre-ceremony photos without the bride, who was presumably still getting ready. I greeted guests in the reception area. I engaged in small talk with Ryan's family, who remained oblivious to the morning's events. At 3:45, I took my seat in the front row of the hotel's grand ballroom. Transformed for the ceremony, with thousands of white roses and crystal candelabras, the string quartet began playing softly. Beside me, Mark squeezed my hand. You okay? He whispered. I nodded, not trusting my voice. I hadn't told him what happened. Today wasn't the day for that conversation. The processional began. Bridesmaids in blush-colored designer gowns floated down the aisle, followed by Natalie's maid of honor, Jessica, who avoided my eyes as she took her place. Then the music changed, and everyone stood. The doors opened, and there was my daughter on her father's arm, radiant in a Monique Lhuillier gown that probably cost as much as a year of her college tuition. She was beautiful, of course. The dress was beautiful too, in a polished, expected way that would photograph perfectly for social media. As she passed our row, her eyes met mine briefly. I smiled genuinely, letting her see nothing but maternal pride. Whatever lay broken between us, this wasn't the moment to acknowledge it. Mark kissed her cheek before placing her hand in Ryan's, and the ceremony proceeded. I watched my only child pledge her life to a man she loved in front of friends and family who had gathered to celebrate them. I listened to the vows, the music, the minister's blessing, and beneath it all I felt a profound sadness, not just for the rejected dress, but for what that rejection represented. A values shift I hadn't fully recognized until today. A daughter who had learned to be ashamed of craftsmanship and authenticity when it didn't come with the right label. The reception that followed was a showcase of expense and meticulous planning. Madison had coordinated every detail from the hand-calligraphed place cards to the 7-tier cake adorned with sugar flowers identical to Natalie's bouquet. I moved through the evening on autopilot, accepting congratulations, making appropriate small talk, posing for photographs with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. The mother-daughter dance was the most difficult moment. Swaying to "What a Wonderful World" in the center of the dance floor, Natalie finally addressed what had happened that morning. "Mum, about the dress," she began quietly. "Not now, Natalie," I interrupted gently. "Today is for celebrating not difficult conversations. But I want to explain, we'll talk after your honeymoon. Today is your day." She looked relieved at the reprieve, which told me everything about how genuine her explanation would have been. We finished the dance in silence, separating with a hug that felt more performed than heartfelt. I left the reception early, pleading a headache that wasn't entirely fabricated. Mark offered to leave with me, but I encouraged him to stay and enjoy the father-daughter moments yet to come. In the quiet of our hotel room, I finally allowed myself to fully feel the day's pain, crying silently into a plush hotel pillow, until exhaustion pulled me into dreamless sleep. The week after the wedding passed in a fog of emotional numbness. I went through the motions, opening the shop each morning, helping customers with fittings and alterations, closing up each evening. But inside I felt hollow, as if something essential had been scooped out of me. The dress remained in its box in my workroom at home, untouched since I'd retrieved it from the hotel storage. I couldn't bring myself to look at it again, but neither could I decide what to do with it. Selling it felt impossible. It had been designed specifically for Natalie's measurements and preferences. Donating it seemed equally wrong, and destroying it despite my hurt was unthinkable. So it sat a beautiful ghost, haunting the corner of my creative space. Carol visited the weekend after the wedding, making the 3-hour drive to check on me in person. We sat in my back garden with glasses of wine, as I recounted the wedding day in detail I'd spared her over the phone. "I still can't believe she did that," Carol said, refilling our glasses. "After everything you've sacrificed for her." "I keep trying to understand when things changed," I said. "When did my skill become something embarrassing instead of impressive?" "It's not about your skill, Layla. It's about her values." Somewhere along the way, she started believing that worth comes from price tags and brand names. "Maybe I contributed to that," I admitted. "Mark and I always wanted her to have more than we did. Maybe we overcompensated, made her believe she deserved only the most expensive things." "Don't you dare blame yourself," Carol said firmly. "Plenty of people grow up with parents who sacrifice for them without becoming status-obsessed. This is about choices Natalie made as an adult." We talked late into the evening, Carol's fierce loyalty a balm to my wounded spirit. Before she left the next day, she made me promise one thing: don't let this kill your joy in creating. Your talent is a gift. Don't let Natalie's rejection dim that light. It was good advice, but difficult to follow. Back in my shop on Monday morning, I found myself hesitating over fabrics, second-guessing design choices. If I had misjudged my own daughter's taste so badly, how could I trust my instincts with clients? The breakthrough came unexpectedly through 16-year-old Zoe, who worked in my shop part-time after school. She was arranging new fabric deliveries when she asked a simple question. "Mrs. Thompson, could you teach me how to make a prom dress, like a real one? Not just the basic stuff we do in home ec." I looked up from the invoice I'd been reviewing to find her fingering a bolt of midnight blue taffeta with undisguised longing. "You want to make your own prom dress?" I asked. She nodded, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. "My mum says we can't afford the ones in the mall, but I found some designs online I think I could do with help." "Is that stupid?" "Not stupid at all," I said, moving to stand beside her. "What designs were you thinking about?" as Zoe showed me pictures on her phone, excitedly describing her vision. Something cold and hard inside me began to thaw. Here was a young woman who saw handmade not as a compromise, but as an opportunity for creativity and personalization, who recognized the value in creating something unique with her own hands. "I'd be happy to teach you," I told her. "In fact, I have an idea. What if we started a weekly class for girls who want to learn dressmaking? You could be my assistant instructor." Zoe's eyes widened. "That would be amazing. I have at least 3 friends who would sign up right away." That evening, instead of going straight home after closing the shop, I stayed late and began sketching out a curriculum for a Design Your Dream Dress workshop. 6 2-hour sessions, covering everything from pattern selection to final fitting aimed at high school girls. By the time I locked up well past midnight, I had a complete plan and a renewed sense of purpose. The next day, I called the director of the local women's shelter, where I'd occasionally donated alteration services. "Denise, I have an idea I'd like to run by you," I began. "What if I offered a free sewing program for some of your residents?" 2 phone calls later, I had arranged to teach a monthly skill-building workshop at the shelter, focusing on practical sewing skills that could potentially lead to employment opportunities. As I threw myself into these new projects, the ache of Natalie's rejection didn't disappear, but it shifted. Instead of focusing on the one person who couldn't value what I offered, I turned my attention to those who could. The wedding dress remained in its box, a problem I wasn't ready to solve. Natalie and Ryan returned from their 2-week honeymoon in the Maldives, settling into married life in their downtown condo. Our communication was sparse and surface level, brief phone calls where neither of us mentioned the dress incident. I was waiting for her to acknowledge what had happened. She seemed to be hoping I'd forget. 3 months after the wedding, the bell above my shop door chimed on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. I looked up from the bridesmaid dress I was altering to find Natalie standing there looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "Mum," she said, "do you have a minute to talk?" I carefully set aside my work and gestured to the small sitting area where clients waited during fittings. "Of course." Natalie perched on the edge of an armchair, her designer handbag clutched in front of her like a shield. "I've been trying to figure out what to say," she began. "About the dress. About everything." I waited, giving her space to continue. "I know I hurt you," she said finally. "And I've been telling myself it wasn't that bad, that you understood the pressure I was under with the wedding. But Jessica said something last week that made me realize I've been lying to myself." "What did she say?" I asked quietly. "She asked if you were still upset about the dress thing. When I said we hadn't really talked about it, she looked shocked. She said if her mother had spent 5 months creating something only to have her reject it, she'd never forgive herself." Natalie's eyes filled with tears. "And she's right. What I did was horrible. I don't know how to make it right." "Why did you do it, Natalie? I need to understand that before we can move forward." She looked down at her hands. It sounds so shallow saying it out loud. My friends from college, Ryan's family, they all have money, real money, old money. I felt like I had to prove I belonged in their world. The right clothes, the right accessories, the right wedding. A custom designer dress was part of that image. So my work wasn't good enough because it didn't have the right name attached to it. No. The dress was beautiful. More beautiful than the one I ended up wearing, if I'm honest. But I was afraid. Afraid people would be able to tell it wasn't designer. Afraid it would mark me as an outsider somehow. And that fear justified hurting me, dismissing months of work and thousands of dollars in materials. Tears spilled down her cheeks. No, nothing justifies that. I got caught up in appearances and status, and I lost sight of what matters. I'm so sorry, Mum. I know saying that doesn't fix anything, but I am truly, deeply sorry. I studied my daughter's face, seeing both the woman she had become and the little girl she had been. Her apology seemed genuine, but reconciliation would require more than words. I accept your apology, I said finally, but trust takes time to rebuild. What happened with the dress isn't just about a garment, it's about values, about whether you see worth in things beyond their brand name or price tag. Natalie nodded, wiping tears away. I understand. I want to do better. I want us to be close again. So do I. But that might look different than before. I'm not the same person I was before the wedding. This experience has changed me. Changed you how? She asked. I told her about the classes for high school girls, about the program at the women's shelter. I've realized my skills aren't just for creating pretty things. They're for empowering others, for preserving a craft that's being lost in a world of fast fashion and disposability. For the first time that day, Natalie smiled genuinely. That sounds amazing, Mum. Would it be okay if I came to help, sometimes not teaching? I'm nowhere near skilled enough, but maybe just assisting. It was a small step, but a meaningful one. I'd like that, I said. We could start with the Saturday morning teen class. They're making formal dresses for spring dance season. As Natalie was leaving, she paused at the door. What happened to the wedding dress? It's still in its box at home. I haven't decided what to do with it. Could I see it again sometime? Really see it this time? I nodded, not quite ready to make more specific plans. That conversation marked the beginning of a slow reconciliation. Natalie did come to help with the Saturday classes, initially awkward, but gradually finding her place. The teenage girls were far more impressed by her marketing career than her designer clothes, which seemed to surprise and humble her. The wedding dress remained in its box for several more months as our relationship cautiously rebuilt. Then one morning, I woke with a clear vision of what should happen to it. I carefully unpacked it, made a few adjustments to the design, and transformed the wedding gown into 3 exquisite christening gowns. The Italian silk, French lace, and hand-sewn pearls took on new life in these tiny garments, which I donated to the hospital's NICU for families who had premature babies. The local newspaper ran a small story about the donation, one featuring a photo of me holding one of the gowns. The article mentioned that the material came from a wedding dress I had designed. When Natalie saw the story, she called immediately. "Mum, that's perfect," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "It's exactly what should have happened with that dress." A year after the wedding, my little tailor shop had transformed. The back room, once used for storage, had been converted into a teaching space with 6 sewing machines donated by a local business. 3 afternoons a week, the shop filled with women learning skills that could lead to jobs in alterations or custom sewing. Saturday mornings belonged to teenage girls, creating everything from casual wear to prom dresses, many of whom now proudly wore handmade as a badge of honor rather than a compromise. Natalie had become a regular presence at these sessions, initially just helping with organization, but gradually learning basic techniques herself. Our relationship had evolved into something different, but stronger, built on greater honesty and clearer boundaries. The most unexpected development came when Natalie announced she was pregnant, just 10 months after the wedding. When she asked if I would help design the nursery, I recognized it as the olive branch it was intended to be. "I'd love to," I told her. "I have some ideas for crib bedding and window treatments that would be beautiful." As her pregnancy progressed, Natalie began bringing me sonogram pictures and nursery color swatches with the same excitement she'd once shown for fabric samples as a child. During one of these visits, as I was showing her designs for a quilted baby blanket, she asked a question that caught me off guard. "Mum, Would you make the baby's christening gown? Something special like the ones you donated to the hospital? I looked up from my sketches, studying her face. Are you sure there are beautiful designer options? I'm sure, she said firmly. I want my child to wear something made with love by their grandmother, something unique that could become a family heirloom. I felt tears prick my eyes. I'd be honored. That evening, after Natalie had left, I pulled out a box I'd kept hidden away. Scraps of the wedding dress that hadn't been used for the hospital donations. Pristine, white silk, delicate lace, tiny pearls and crystals. Enough to create one more christening gown. This one specifically designed for my first grandchild. As I laid out the materials on my work table, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The pain of rejection had transformed into something unexpected, a wider sharing of my gift, a deeper understanding of my worth beyond my daughter's approval, and eventually a more honest relationship with Natalie herself. The christening gown would be my finest work yet, not because of the expensive materials or intricate techniques, but because it would represent a full circle moment of healing. The fabric once rejected would be transformed into something joyfully received. The hands once dismissed as homemade would create an heirloom to be treasured for generations. 2 months later, when my granddaughter Lily was born, the christening gown was ready, a confection of silk and lace that took everyone's breath away when Natalie unwrapped it at the hospital. "Mom, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "More beautiful than any designer could have created." "That's because it's made with love," I said simply. "The most valuable material of all." On Lily's christening day, as I watched my granddaughter wearing the gown I had created from the remnants of rejection, I felt a profound sense of peace. Sometimes our greatest wounds lead to unexpected gifts, if we have the courage to transform them rather than be defined by them. When I began teaching Lily her first simple stitches at age 4, her small fingers awkward but eager around the plastic needle, I saw the thread of legacy continuing. Not just the skill of creating beautiful things, but the deeper wisdom that true value comes from within, from care, intention, and love made visible through patient hands. I hope my story resonates with those of you who have experienced rejection of your gifts or talents by those closest to you. Have you found ways to transform that pain into something meaningful? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story touched you, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more real-life journeys of resilience and growth. And if you know someone struggling with family relationships or rediscovering their worth after rejection, please share this video with them. Thank you for being part of this community where we can share our truths and find strength in our shared experiences.